Next on Meet the Farmer TV, Copperfox Distillery in Sperryville, Virginia. Find out what single malt whiskey and cows have in common. Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by Planet Earth Diversified, Melli Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design. In the Kitchen Magazine, serving the community and everyone who loves good food. Culpeper's Channel 21, helping to preserve the agricultural history of Virginia, and Flavor Magazine, serving the Piedmont's local food and wine culture. This week on Meet the Farmer TV, we travel to Copperfox Distillery, where Rick Wassman makes a single malt whiskey from grain grown locally here in Virginia, and even feeds the waste product back to the cows.
Arugula to zucchini at the White House.
Save the family farm.
In the kitchen.
In the end, the bill passed.
It's about preserving some semblance of the family farm.
And for locally grown food.
It's about market access.
Plants don't have personalities. I got one.
I call it the new American agriculture, and our whole agriculture education system is going to change.
We have a great solution to some of these crises that we're now facing.
And you're watching.
And you're watching.
And you're watching.
And you're watching
Meet the Farmer TV.
Now, we were at Sperryville, Virginia at Copperfox Distillery, where Rick Wassman gave us a personal tour of how he malts the grain and brews this single malt whiskey, how it's aged in particular barrels, the entire process from measuring and recording the specific gravity of each of the processes. Let's go and check that out. Well, here we are with Rick Wassman at Copperfox Distillery, and we're going to have a little tour. Tell us about what you do here, Rick.
All right. Well, thanks, Ben. First off, we make this wonderful whiskey. It's a little bit unique, and I'll get into some of the reasons why. But we make a single malt whiskey with a single malt means it's 100% malted barley in the recipe or the grain bill that we make the whiskey from. So some other types of whiskey use corn and maple and stuff like that. We don't do anything like that. We came up with our own thing, and it's 100% malted barley. In that respect, it's similar to Scotch, but there's a lot of things that we do that are completely unique in the spirits world. And
that's great. Now, you get all this barley locally.
We get I hope we get a chance, or we're going to walk through the distillery. But we get all our barley, and we start our tour with a shrine to our farmer, because this is the guy that starts it all. His name is Billy Dawson. The name of his company is Bay's Best Feed, and Billy, I see we a little crooked, maybe that's because of the whiskey, but it's out in Heathsville, Virginia, which is about an hour or so, it's toward Reedville. It's east of Fredericksburg. Virginia is a great place to grow barley, and when I thought about getting into the business, I mean, it's a great climate, great soil. I contacted Virginia Tech, and they were working on a bunch of strains, and they were thrilled to hear that someone was going to do something with the barley, because no one was, commercially at any size making any beer, no one was making any whiskey, and it's not the fault of the farming or the climate or anything, it's just no one was doing it. So they were exceedingly helpful with giving us a couple of strains to try out, and what we settled on was a strain called Thoroughbred that they had kind of brought along with some Turkish and French malting parents, and it just works out great in Virginia. The flavor of the whiskey that comes through is wonderful. We're thrilled with it. It's not particularly the highest yielding of the barleys as far as the alcohol, but what we're about is the flavor. We don't have the economies of scale. We're not trying to be the lowest cost producer, the cheapest bottle on the shelf, but we are crazy about the quality. So everything we do is, is this going to impact the flavors, or anything we can do a little bit better? And it all comes together in a real nice whiskey.
That's great.
So that's the barley. We just had a little
Show me the grains there.
Well, we'll see more of it in a bigger scale, but this is the unmalted barley. This is kind of what it looks like when it's malted. You have the little rootlets, and we'll look at that. And then we have to grind it into a flour before it goes into the mash, and that is our malt flour. And we're
now, what does malting mean?
God, what a brilliant question. Can I show you?
Sure.
All right. Well, we're going to go into the malt room, and then we should turn on the light. In we go. The magic malt room.
All right.
Malting is a partial germination of the barley seed that changes the starch into a sugar in a natural process. Barley is kind of a magic grain. It's a universal grain. When you make bourbon or Tennessee whiskey, they are required to have a portion of the recipe as malt because it's got a universal key. It's got an enzyme that'll change the other grain's starch into sugar. And that's what we're really trying to do, is get a solution of sugar to introduce the yeast to, and it's ultimately that is what makes it alcohol. But malting, this is our unmalted barley. And what we do, we're a very small batch. We start with 1,200 pounds in here, and we do a steeping process to wake up the grain. It's 3 days of soaking with 3 changes of water. It's a little bit anaerobic, so it uses up oxygen, so we need to put fresh water in and it needs some time to rest. So it almost simulates like it's being rained on multiple times before it finally says, okay, it's time to fulfill my destiny and become Wasman's whiskey.
Right. So it's really sprouting then.
Well, we're stopping the process just before the green shoot comes out, or the acrosphere. So it's not quite sprouting, but 3 days in here is kind of the alarm clock that wakes it up. Then we put it out on the floor. It's on the floor for 5 days, and it needs to be raked. And if actually, I got to do my chores while you're here. So this is the barley. It was put out yesterday, and you can see the little white chit on the bottom. That's where the root's going to come out. There's the dog behind it. And when we rake it, this is, I went over to Scotland to see what they were doing, and so I just formulated my little tools and my ratios of the kiln and the malt floor after what I worked in over there. So raking is usually the job of the manager of malt, and that's the MOM, or the mom, and she is, she'll be down in a second.
Now I notice it smells a little different already.
Oh God, doesn't it have a great aroma in here? We love the smell of barley. I talked to people, I've been to different conferences with distillers, and the one guy had the nerve to say in front of me, he said, oh, what you ought to do is build your distillery next to a brewery and let them do all the grain for you, make all the beer. All you have to do is distill it. And I just got up and said, well, you got to be out of your mind. Why would you want to be in the whiskey business if you didn't want to play with grain? It's what the thing's all about. So, I don't know, but everyone has a different approach. And
now, do you have to control this temperature?
well, barley likes to malt when it's, close to the earth temperature in the winter. It's a winter crop. And so we like to keep it right around 50 degrees is ideal. So
do you have trouble in the summertime where it gets too warm?
Well, good question, but we really don't malt in the summer. We try and get our work done, all the malt while it's cold. So we just work with the seasons. We really, the end of September, we'll start, and then we'll go until we've, met our quota, which is sometimes, April or
so you
like
really
that.
are following the seasons. You're getting your grain locally and malting when the earth temperature's right. And
we're not pulling plants out of the ground, but we're really working with everything and everything that we got. As far as
so the summer you're just bottling and distilling?
Well, we're still making whiskey. What you see is the malt we've put up that'll be made into whiskey all summer long. Okay. So we'll run the still all year round. We just won't.
So once you do the malting process and this enzyme is starting to be produced, you can actually stop at that point.
Yeah,
and store.
It could store up for a year or conceivably more, but we're not really.
So it's very different than sprouts in that way because you can't stop sprouts and hold them for a year.
Indeed, yeah. And let's see if we have pick a bag here.
Oh, puppy.
So this, you can just see, this is our malt, and you can see the little rootlets have come out, but we've stopped it before the sprout.
Yeah.
And this has been flavored with a little bit of smoke, and we'll see where we do that next.
Yeah.
It smells a little different from what's on the floor.
And you can see the dryness and so is there do you kind of monitor a percentage moisture or something that it's safe to put in the bags and not mold or break down?
Were we that sophisticated, I suppose we would. But what we do is we dry it, and we know by weight and doing a couple of tests up at the co-op that we get it down to about 5% moisture, maybe 3. So we start with 1,200 pounds, we get down to about 1,100 pounds of actual malt. And what we receive, which is the storable grain before it's malted, is about, right at 14.5 or 15% moisture. So
after malting and storage, it's actually lower percentage than fresh from the field.
Right. So the next step is the kiln. And why don't we hop on over? This is the most glamorous manager of malt you could imagine. This is my beautiful mother, who is part of the operation. And I talked her into coming down here from the cold northern Buffalo. It wasn't so hard to get her out of Buffalo.
I see.
Beautiful, sweet Virginia. But Mom is in charge of the malt schedule. She fills and empties the steeps. She rakes it 4 or 5 times a day. She tells me when I need to do something. She's working the fires today and keeping everything going. Not to mention keeping me out of trouble.
All right.
And so the next step for the barley is the kiln. And what we do is we pick it up with a shovel. You have to be a little gentle with it on the floor stage because it's fragile and that. So we shovel it into the box, take it over with the forklift. The outside of the kiln is here, so that wall separates when we're loading and unloading. But we have a batch in there that's drying. Actually, we can go in and look at it, but it's similar to what's on the floor. And that's our stairway to barley heaven.
I see.
So,
your own stairway to heaven.
That is it. And then this is our guardian, who's on top of the scale, which is something to remind us that we got to be honest in our weights and measure, but also a guardian of our malt, and that's Sir Malts-a-Lot.
I see he has 2 thermostats too.
So yes, he does. He's a hot commodity. And in here is our wintertime sauna.
I see. So the grain's above us.
The grain's above us. That's perforated steel floor with all those tiny little holes allow the smoke to go and the heat to permeate, dry the grain, and flavor the grain. I say flavor the grain. The reason I got into the whiskey business was really all about this stage of the whiskey making operation. I went to a tasting for one of the big Scotch makers, and they were talking about the peat flavoring the malt. And I said, well, that's wonderful. Peat, I know what peat is like, but wouldn't it be nice if they used, someone must be using applewood and cherrywood, because that's what I like to cook with, is fruitwood.
So they were burning peat.
They burn peat, and the smoke flavors there, and that's why Scotch has that distinctive flavor. And I had that thought, not with the idea of starting a distillery, but with the idea of buying a bottle of whiskey where someone was flavoring the malt with something other than peat. And as I researched, the thing that I found out is that nobody was doing anything different. It was either Irish whiskey didn't flavor their malt at all, so just dry heat, no smoke, or Scotch whiskey, they flavored it with peat, and nothing in between. And I'm thinking, well, that's pretty... I mean, isn't it crazy?
So do you like open the stove up and get some smoke in here? Or?
No, what we do, on the first day, we use low heat. We use our boiler.
Okay.
So we just have about 100 degrees, because what I learned over in Scotland is you have to bring the temperature up slowly.
Okay.
You can't just blast it with high heat. So the first day we don't build a fire in the stove. We build a fire on the stove. We get applewood, so we have a kind of an open little flame going, and once the coals get going, we'll put a little lid on it and just adjust the air in the lid to make a smoldering fire for the first 24 hours. And what we do 3 or 4 times during that 24 hours is get it so smoky in here that you can't see from one end of the room to the other.
Yeah, I can kind of see the gold film on everything.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
It's a beautiful thing. So first day, first 24 hours smoke, the second and third day, high heat to finish the drying. So it's the first day when the barley is most receptive.
So where are we now? Like day 2, 3?
This is day 3, so this is the last day of the heat.
So how much grain is above us now?
That's that 1,200 pounds.
Okay. And you'll dry that to what, like 1,100 or something?
Right. So about that 5% moisture. And then what we do, it goes, it's stored in the bags.
Okay.
And when we're ready to make the whiskey, we have to grind it into a malt flour. And we do that. We have the John Deere hammer mill, so nothing fancy. It's driven by an old Ford with a bad transmission, but a good PTO. So it's something that we picked up at a very reasonable cost. And then we bring it back into the still house. And in the still house, what we do is we have
New smells.
New smells, indeed. We've got our measuring cup, and this is not something that we buy at Walmart. How you do? Yeah. I'm sorry, maybe I didn't introduce the dog. This is Acacia. This is my dog that is part of the inspiration for the whiskey business. I wanted to, when I was creating my dream job, I wanted to have a job where I could have the dog with me.
Could you have animals?
And she is a good pup, I know.
Does she taste your final product?
She's not a big whiskey drinker.
No?
She likes the white dog. So, anyway.
So this is the measuring cup of the ground flour.
Right. So this is, it's got little fingers in there, and we've got it filled with grain right now. From here, we pick this up with our forklift. So the flour, we use that measuring cup to drop into the mash tank. The mash tank we fill with water, heat up to about 155 degrees. I say about because our real focus is the after drop-in temperature, and since the flour varies in temperature, it's outside or whatever. But then we pump it over to the fermenter, and that's where we introduce the yeast. Nice piece of cherry wood to stir it up. So that is just coming around. By tomorrow, that'll be bubbling up about 4 or 5 inches and looking like a scene out of Macbeth. Little boil. What we do next is then that in the fermentation is where all the alcohol is created. Okay. So all the alcohol is made there. What I did this morning is pump it over into the mash still. This is our primary still. Every time we run the still, we have a load of mash like that fills that. The spirit still, we have a 2-run system though. We need 2 loads of mash to get our finished product. Okay. And this is, I'm going to go over quick, and it's not essential that you understand all this, but after 2 runs, we have heads and tails from the 2 runs. The heads are the first of the distilled spirit that comes over. The tails is the weaker stuff that finishes. And when we have the heads and tails from 2 runs, we have it at about 50 proof or 25% alcohol. That, and it's about 80 gallons or so, and that 80 gallons will go into the spirit still for the first run of our cycle. The high spirits, after 2 runs, has gone to barrels, so that's empty.
Okay.
And when we run our first run, what we wind up with is about 110 to 115 proof in the high spirits tank, about 85 to 90 gallons. That 85, 90 gallons of 110 proof on the second run is what goes in the high spirits. And then we, new load of mash in the mash still, we run it again. The steam from the mash still, from the alcohol boiling, that's a jacketed vessel with steam running around the outside jacket. The steam from the alcohol goes up, over, and goes into the side of the spirit still. The only heat source for the spirit still is the alcohol steam from the mash still. What we get done with when we finish with our mash is kind of a stinky goo. It smells like maybe cabbage or a sauerkraut or something. But it happens to be something that the cows absolutely love. It's a commodity, the big distillers and that. It's, you see it quoted in the Wall Street Journal, dried distillers grain. They have big dryers and everything. But what we do, we don't dry it. We just pump the liquid out, and, the guy is right across the way that takes it, and he goes, 2-3 miles up, and he's got his herd of cows. Right. So he gets the F350 with the 500-gallon tank on it, and we clean it all up. He gets free stuff, and the guy happens to have some apple orchards, and we use apple wood, and it just happens to...
these are really good interrelationships in a local food system.
I think they're fantastic interrelationships.
Yeah.
So if we could only get the guy to drink some whiskey, then we'd be all set.
Oh, your farmer doesn't drink, huh?
Well, he might have.
Yeah.
But anyway, from the high spirits tank, what our next step is, it's a little too strong for what we put right in the barrel, so we'll add our filtered water to bring the proof pretty exactly down to 125 proof.
Okay.
And that's our barrel proof. So we'll take that tank physically and we bring it on back into the spirits room. It's just one room after another.
I see.
And this is the place where the spirits tank lands. And we stick it up there with the forklift, and that lets us gravity feed into the barrels. We put the barrels on the scale when we're filling them. We weigh them empty, we weigh them full. Through the magic of subtraction,
yes,
we get the net weight, and that at the exact proof gives us how much whiskey we've made. And you know, one thing is, I don't know how much you get involved, but we got the government kind of very interested in how much whiskey we're making.
Now, are they special aging barrels that you're using?
Well, what we use are used bourbon barrels, which is typical of most Scotch or Irish whiskey.
Now, are they a burned oak?
They are charred oak barrels. And what we do, and it's a little bit secret, so I'm not going to open it up for the camera, but you know, I mentioned that, you know, we're the only distillery, or maybe I didn't, we're the only distillery in North America that malts our own barley. Mm-hmm. We're the only distillery in the world that flavors our malt with fruitwood smoke. Right. So we're completely different on the front end, and by intent. And when we get to the maturation or the aging or the barrel room, we're also different. We have these little strings, and what the strings are connected to is little bags, and the bags are filled with toasted apple wood and toasted oak wood chips in multiple generations, and it goes right into our little trap door.
Uh-huh.
And
so this is how you get this beautiful color.
This is how we get the beautiful color. So, and it just so happens, we get the color in a much shorter period of time. And what we've got here is sometimes, you know, a man just has to come sit and think about his whiskey. And it's not easy, but
looks like he's pondering his chips too.
We endlessly test chips. And I don't think that'll ever stop. And it goes back to the beginning, you know, when I was thinking about doing this, we had the malting idea, and I just knew the malt would be good. I mean, how could that idea not be good?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah,
you just know
wood,
that you smoke it at some amount and it's going to be better than that peat. But ultimately, when we're bottling whiskey, and we hate to see any of our whiskey leave, not really, we're really glad to see our whiskey leave, but not because we don't like it, but it's just because it keeps the doors open.
Right.
But we'll grab our trusty forklift and bring the barrel receiver down, and we'll dump 3 or 4 barrels of whiskey into the receiver, and that's a beautiful thing. Uh-huh. To see the whiskey come flowing out of it, glugs out, and it's dark and color, rich and honey colored and fantastic. We'll stir it, and I gotta show off our paddles again. This is our spirits paddle, and we do make our paddles, but this one is to remember whoever's stirring the whiskey that our whiskey is made with love, and we always remember that every time we touch the spirits paddle. But 3 to 4 barrels in there. It's usually 40 to 60 cases of whiskey. We'll cut it down to our bottle proof, which is 96, and put the tank back up there, gravity feed into the bottling tank, so take out any of the particulates from the chips and the char from the barrels. So Sean or I can be doing a portion of this while we're doing other things, and if we have some downtime, we come here and we fill bottles until this is full. When this is full, then we label bottles. This is where we put the labels on, and then they go into a tray over here. And this is where the filled, capped, and labeled bottles are. And then over here is where we put the wax on. And this is, Sean is the master waxer, as he is many things, but he'll dip it front label down. That puts the jaunty angle on the bottle. But then the guy, as brilliant as he is, comes up with this idea. He sits and he spins every bottle just about this fast while listening to music, and that puts that tight little spiral in the top of the bottle.
Now this is truly a handcrafted product from start to finish.
Well, it is, and then this is kind of the representation of it. So it's not bunk, it's not anything. We're doing it all. We're just, innovating.
You're probably the only one spinning the wax on the
I think we are. It kind of makes like a C for Copperfox.
I see.
Or maybe it's a C for quality.
Yeah.
Or C for can't spell.
You're right.
But it's not quite, but it's not done yet. And you thought there's more.
There's more.
There's more, because then the batch number is handwritten by me. Sean does all the spirals. I do all the batch numbers.
So you sign every bottle with a batch number.
I do, and this is the end of batch number 26.
That's terrific.
So that's how we make Wasman's whiskey.
So Rick, you've told us how you get your grain from a local farmer, pretty much one grower. The residue from distilling ends up being feed for another local farmer's cattle, and you're getting wood chips from the surrounding area, and you even get the bourbon barrels, the
Virginia Gentleman.
Virginia Gentleman. So you've got this whole operation, and it seems to be completely hand operated from start to finish. You're raking the grain, you're hand filling and bottling, hand labeling, and you're also supporting all of these Virginia businesses.
Yeah, what he said. It's incredible.
So you've got a lifetime now of trying different wood chips and experimenting with slightly different chipping methods.
Well, what I've always really wanted to do is grow vegetables, but I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe you could make compost.
Maybe. So,
or maybe you could just bottle the vegetables in high spirits.
High spirits.
Yeah.
Cucumber.
Carrots and cucumbers in high spirits.
That would be.
We'll look for that next year.
All right, we're on it. We're on it. Some people who use cell phones, that's their primary phone. We don't have that because we don't have reception. But where the cows go, they have a cell tower right near their field, and they somehow hooked in, so they actually call me up, the cows, when we're too slow on production, and they're like, hey man, we need some more mash. And so the cows are really jonesing for the mash. So drink more whiskey so that the cows can be happy.
Well, now that we've seen how a local distillery uses local grains and creates their own single malt whiskey, and how cows have somehow learned to use cell phones so they can get some of that mash, thank you for joining us for another Meet the Farmer TV. Next time on Meet the Farmer TV, we'll go back and look at a year in review, some unseen footage and highlights of particularly interesting interviews. Thanks for joining us for another Meet the Farmer TV, and please let each of our underwriters know you appreciate their support bringing you Meet the Farmer TV. Check out their websites and tell them personally you appreciate their support underwriting Meet the Farmer TV. Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by Planet Earth Diversified, Melli Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design. In the Kitchen Magazine, serving the community and everyone who loves good food. Culpeper's Channel 21, helping to preserve the agricultural history of Virginia. And Flavor Magazine, serving the Piedmont's local food and wine culture.